Hey, it's Callum Bose here, and today I'm going to show you how to use the browser inspector to determine the structure of the Knack page and also work out how you're going to custom style it. So I've got a Knack page open here, and if I right click and select inspect, I'll bring up the inspector. I'm in Google Chrome. It might be different in different browsers, but it'll be something along these lines. So when it opens up here, I've got this top section, which is the HTML structure of your page. You can see basically the HTML code that Knack has generated when it loaded this page. And then at the bottom, I've got the CSS styling that applies to whatever element you've currently got selected. So if I say, for example, pick something random like that search bar, I can see that all of these styles are being applied to that search bar. The other thing I can do is click this little button here, and then I can actually hover on the page and find a particular element in the HTML that I'm looking for. So if I want this particular table header here, I can click it and then it's brought that up for me. So once I have something selected in the HTML here, I can play around in here with the styles. Now these changes don't persist, but it's useful to help you work out what custom styling you might want to apply by writing CSS in the Knack builder. So I can toggle on and off different styles that Knack has already applied and see what impact that has. Now, sometimes you'll see that it doesn't really have an impact, and that's because some of the styles are kind of like duplicated in Knack. So if I untoggle this padding top, some other padding top to find somewhere else is probably going to take over. Here it is. So if I wanted to get rid of padding, I might have to scroll through a lot of places to eventually find all the padding tops that are being applied. Now, these styles here are also not necessarily applied just to this element. They might be rules that apply to everything on the page. So sometimes you toggle something and you'll see a lot of different parts of the page change. I've kind of messed things up, so I'm going to refresh to reset everything. Okay, so let's say we decided that we'd like to add some more spacing below this articles header. So I'll find the articles header first by clicking that button, selecting it, and I've got this header 2 here. And then I can see here that there's some margin bottom being applied. So I want to apply more margin bottom. Now there's this useful part of the inspector. If you scroll right to the bottom of this bottom bar here, this is the box model where you can play around with margin, padding, and border. And once again, this doesn't persist, but it's useful for working out what styles you want. So let's say, all right, let me try 40 pixels of bottom margin, and it's given me more bottom margin. Let's do something really extreme, like 150 pixels. Cool, okay. So if I scroll now to the top of the inspector, it's actually added this rule here, which is that bottom margin that I just did. So it's showing me that the rule I've just added to this header 2 is margin bottom 150 pixels. So if I refresh though, unfortunately that, like we said before, it won't actually persist. So now I need to work out how do I apply that rule that I've done temporarily in the browser into my actual Knack CSS code. So wait for it to load, and there it's gone. So let me go and add that 150 pixels of bottom margin again. And now I need to do two things. I need to know how I select that element with the CSS, and then I need to know my rule. So I've got the code for my rule here, but I need to know how do I actually tell the Knack CSS code that I want to target this particular header to. So Chrome has this cool feature where you can right click and you can go copy selector. Now if I go to my Knack CSS, I can paste that in, and that should, if it all works properly, give me, let me target that element with the CSS. Now the other thing I can do is right click on my rule here and go copy declaration and paste that in, and that should be my CSS rule. So let me save the CSS. Now when I go back and refresh, previously this would disappear, but now it should stay. Okay, Okay, here we go. So I've got my bottom margin and that's stuck around because I've applied that rule in my CSS. So if I inspect again, I can see the same header too, and I can see the rule that I've actually applied in the Knack builder there. And I can, once again, I can toggle that on and off to show or hide. Now that isn't necessarily the best way to make your CSS really maintainable and readable, but it's a good way to start getting to know the structure of the Knack HTML page and also to get started with applying CSS to particular things. I'll do a later video on tips and tricks to make your CSS really maintainable and efficient, but that's a good way to start.